Rotarians, let's call this meeting to order. This is meeting 5,482 of the Rotary Club of San Jose. Here we go. All right. I want to thank the executive chefs. Where are you, executive chefs? Fantastic. They were our greeting line today, and I know they're going to have some time up here to tell you a few things down the agenda. And then we've got our traveling, let's see who we've got. Oh, Brooke Gadassi and Milan Valentin with our red badgers with microphones today. Where are you guys? Woohoo! Tell us your name again, and then also who your sponsor is, maybe a little bit of fun fact. And I think we're ready for to be quiet, Jeff. Thank you. Thank you, Piano Man.
Hi, President Heather. Brooke Gadassi. My sponsor is Nicole Leckler. Super excited to be back at Rotary today.
Thank you, Brooke. And you look so different from Fish Day. You can do the whole spectrum. Thanks for being there. Milan.
Good afternoon, President Heather. Milan Valentin. I am the Executive Director at the African American Community Service Agency. My sponsor is Ms. Serpa, and I have a set of twin brothers, but I have 4 sets of twins in my family.
Wow.
Stay away from me.
That's a great, lots of you to love there. Just keep making copies of yourself. Fantastic. All right, if you are a visiting guest or a visiting Rotarian with a guest, please stand up so our microphones can find you. Well, I know we got a couple at least. I've got one in the back. Go for it, Milan. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Heather. How are you?
I'm awesome. How are you?
I'm good.
Great to see you.
Thanks. My name's Krista Salvo, Public Relations, and I'd like to introduce my guest, Rebecca Turner, and she is a retired healthcare administrator.
Welcome. Really glad to have you. Thank you. Do you, Chris, do you have an open seat at your table there? No? All right. I've got a visiting guest in the back, and she needs a home. Can someone be hospitable and raise a hand if you... There we go. Welcome her on in there. That's how we do it. That's Rotary. Nice. Okay, who else is...
Hi.
Guide me. Hi.
Lisa Christian, visiting Rotarian from San Francisco Club, and also worked with this great organization on the mobile medical clinic.
Fantastic to have
kudos
you.
to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
President Heather, Mike Conniff back here on your left.
Hi, Mike.
Very happy to have 2 more students from the iHouse, which we've sponsored for many, many years. They're Matthew, who is a major in art studio, and Nathan, Southern California, who is a major in occupational therapy. And as a man who just got out of his hip surgery, I'm happy for occupational therapists. Thank you. They'll be having exams next week, so we probably won't see them for 5 or 6 months.
Oh, great to have you, iHouse. Thanks for being here. All right. Hello, Catherine.
Hello, President Heather. It's Catherine Tompkison. I have 2 guests today. One is Julian Pardo de la Zella, a proud native of the U.S. Virgin Islands, and he's an attorney downtown. And then my other guest is Amir Jenkins. He's an entrepreneur, and he's the founder and CEO of Construction Containment Services.
Great to have you both. Thanks for bringing some guests to us, Catherine. Appreciate that. Looks like we're just going to pass the mic. Oh, right over here. How are you?
Hi, President Heather. I have my longtime friend, Matthew Quevedo. Matthew is the Deputy Chief of Staff to Mayor Matt Mahan and a phenomenal human being.
Great to see you back in the room, Matt. Thank you. Hey, Johnny.
Hey, President Heather, how are you?
Doing
Thank you.
great.
Johnny Camus, my sponsor is Catherine Tompkison, and I have a guest today. Her name is Trish Dorsey. She works at Goodwill. This is her 2nd visit, and she happens to have the same title as me, Director of Community Engagement, and she's very interested in becoming a member.
Fantastic. Great to have you. Thanks for all the good work you're doing in the community. All right, looks like we've got Steve Preminger next. Hi, Steve.
Hi, thank you. My sponsor is Dr. Rod Diradan, and
Rod
I'm
Squad.
here to introduce my younger brother, Ken Preminger, who's joining us for the 2nd time.
Wonderful. Great to have you here. Say hi to your mom on Sunday. It's Mother's Day. You guys know that.
My name is Ravi Dua.
Hi, Ravi.
I'm a Rotarian from India. And I'm a member of Rotary Club Gurgaon. We have about 130 people, and I thought ours was a big club. And I came here, and you said you have 400 people. My God, that's really fantastic. So our club is there for almost 50 years. We run a Rotary public school there also, and we have thalassemia actions, and we have blood banks, and we have all kinds of other things. So it's one of the biggest club in Gurgaon, probably only club in the world where the school is owned by the Rotary Club.
Wow, well, great to have you. And we've been around for 100 years, so by the time you're at your 75, you'll be at 400 members, no problem.
Thank you
Thank you
very
for
much.
being here. Yes. Hi, Matt Robin.
Hi, President Heather. Matt Robin, nonprofit fundraising auctioneer and farm animal sanctuary. This is my guest, Sean Paul Guess. He is here for the second time, and rumor has it is putting in his application, so huzzah.
That's the kind of rumor I like.
Yeah.
Good rumor. Wonderful. All right, how am I doing? Oh, got one more. Hello, Jason.
Hello, President Heather. I am Jason Kazarian. I'm glad to be a former member of this club, and I am now a visiting Rotarian from the club in Arlington, Texas.
And he brought us a flag today. Thank you, Jason. Great to have you back in the room. All righty. All right, we're looking good. Okay, next up, I think we're going to bring up the Gala Gals. Where's Stephanie Bylansky-Fair and Suzanne Wolf? Oh, they're right here. So prepared. Here we go.
Yeah, go ahead. And then I think you have to hit it a second time.
Okay. So good to be here. Did everyone have fun at the gala? We're up here to thank everyone. We want to thank the gala committee for all the hard work that they did to put this amazing event on. I think everyone had an amazing time. We want to thank President Heather for having such a fun theme of events this year. And for their support with the sponsors as well. We want to thank the staff, Leslie, Marie, and Lisa for their support. We could not have done it without them. We want to thank all the sponsors, especially the Brandon Burke Foundation for being the presenting sponsor. We also want to thank everyone who attended. If everyone who attended, anyone who bid on the auction items, donated auction items, people that gave to Lent Need, and to everyone for their amazing sparkling energy at Flight of Us. We had so much fun. Look at these great photos. They are online for you. If you went to the gala and you want to see your photos, please check it out online through the website. Here we are, thanking our sponsors. Again, Brandon Burke Family Foundation. All of the Ruby Partners at $10,000. Emerald Innovators at $7,500. The Opal Ambassadors, $5,000. And our Pearl Partners at $3,500. Please give them all a round of applause, as well as our in-kind sponsors. We thank you all for your generosity and your support. Okay, do we have a drum roll? Ready? Okay. The Rotary Club of 2025 Kaleidoscope Gala raised a record $264,000, 466. Did I say that right?
It did. Congratulations, everyone. Thank you for your support and all your work.
Dang. And as if we haven't asked you for enough, we're going to ask you for more. It's ring the bell time. Thank you so much. I'm actually going to start this off. We can have our traveling mics go around. If you have something that you're celebrating, as a reminder, if you're new to this, you get to ring the bell for $100 for each bit of good news or something you want to share. It could be something you're even just challenged with and you want us to know about and send some love your way, or something really fabulous. You can ring the bell as many times as you want. $100 a ring. I'm going to start us out for $100 to thank my gala committee chairs, Stephanie and Suzanne. Thank you so much. All right, who's got the mic first? Oh, Bert George.
I'll
Hi,
take
Bert.
it. I would like to ring the bell 5 times and say thank you to my buddies from the Executive Chefs. I'm looking at you, Vince, and all the other guys that helped me, and Cindy and Kay and her group from the Culinary Hospitality Committee that helped with the last Joseph George barbecue last Thursday. We had 500 people, and we as a group put it all on the Rotary Club. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That's like 1 ring per 100 people. I kind of like that ratio.
Hi, President Heather.
Hi.
I'm Catherine Vanderer. I would like to ring the bell twice for graduates in my family. My niece, Grace Cermelli, Mike's daughter, is graduating Denison next week. And I have a nephew named Joe Cermelli who's graduating up in El Dorado Hills.
Congratulations.
Hi, President Heather. I'd like to ring the bell once in honor of Tim Gill, who is preparing for his upcoming year.
Excellent. Congratulations, Tim. Thank you, Terry. So thoughtful.
James Williams.
Hi, James.
Hi. I'd like to ring the bell. First, I'd like to ring it once for City Lights Theater Company. They threw the most incredible event, led, of course, by our own Lisa Millette 2 weekends ago. And they are a wonderful organization, and it was a great evening. I would encourage people to go next year to their fundraising event. It's quite a party. And since I'm standing up, I have to ring the bell a second time for Symphony San Jose, which has a performance this weekend that is almost sold out. They're doing phenomenal. Robert Massey, our own member, is doing phenomenal things with the symphony, so I encourage you to join them.
Look at him being all shy over there. Hey, Robert, give us a little wave. City Lights and our Symphony, thank you for supporting them by going and for giving them a tribute here.
I'm up.
Hello, Emily.
Hi, President Heather. I'm Emily Robin. My sponsors are Mike Conniff and Steve Borkenhagen, and I would like to ring the bell twice using the Ring the Bell tickets that I won at the gala. So whoever's keeping the books, don't bill me.
All right, then speed it up.
One ring is because I have fewer than 20 shifts left at my current job before I move to my new job at the Santa Clara Valley Medical Center.
Yes.
And the second bell is a 1-week advanced ring to say happy birthday to my husband, Matt Robin. We're going to be traveling in D.C. next week. He's performing at Police Week. So happy birthday exactly 1 week ahead.
Happy birthday, Matt. Hi.
Hi, President Heather. My name is Caroline Wallace.
Hi, Carolyn.
A brand new Rotary member. My sponsor is Rod. Hey, I literally have my new member orientation tomorrow, so hello. I'm also on the board of the Guadalupe River Park Conservancy and just wanted to share a really exciting update and event with you all. So this year marks the 10th anniversary of the Rotary Play Garden. And I actually just got confirmation we welcomed our 1 millionth user on March 14th.
Wow.
So the Rotary Play Garden was open in May 2015. It's San Jose's first all-inclusive play space. And so next Thursday, May 15th, we are hosting, the GRPC is hosting an exclusive after-hours tour of the Play Garden for Rotarians and longtime supporters of the park. So more details will be out in the bulletin, including RSVP details, so just email me, Caroline Wallace. So that is next Thursday, May 15th, 5:30 to 7.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Hey, is Julie Matsushima in the room? Just give me a wave. Hey, Julie. Oh wait, she needs a microphone. Let's get, because I bet you this is kind of companion. We'll get right back to you, Blake. No, we're getting you. You stay, Blake. Milan, go, ready.
I will ring the bell for 10-year anniversary of the Rotary Play Garden 5 times.
Thank you, founder. That project was a passion project of Julie's, if you weren't aware, and it turned into the most beautiful thing. So take your passions and channel them through Rotary. Blake, what you got?
Hi, President Heather. Hi, everyone. My name is Blake Ward. My sponsor is Helen Lambert. I'd like to ring the bell one time. I started a podcast called the Red Room Podcast, where I'm interviewing local community leaders. And since there's a lot of you here, I thought, why not extend the invitation to you to come and be on the show and talk about the positive change you make in the community and how San Jose Rotary has helped you out with that. So feel free to reach out to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Blake. Hi, Deanna.
Hello, President Heather. Deanna Persai. My sponsor was Kathy Kimball. I want to ring the bell 2 times for my 2 daughters. One graduated a couple of years ago in engineering. My youngest daughter is graduating next month at the University of Washington, Seattle. And
Go Huskies?
Environmental
Yeah,
studies. So I tell people that I won with one and lost with one. You guys can decide.
Congratulations and thank you.
President Heather,
Hello.
Brad Barron, I would like to ring the bell to honor my daughter, my youngest, Savannah, who will be going to the College of Holy Cross this year and playing volleyball.
Nicely done. Congratulations. Thanks for sharing the great news with us. All right, how am I doing
President
in the room?
Heather, sorry, I'm running around. I'm over here on your right.
Hi, there you are.
Hi, sorry. Kathleen Thomas, my sponsor was Terry Chapman. And I wanted to ring the bell. My husband, Pablo Basan, who's an electrician, just started his own business, BZN Electric. And so if you need those hot water pump circulators or EV chargers or new outlets or anything like that, let us know.
Fantastic. Thanks for helping us all out. I've got that. Hi, Jean.
Hi, President Heather. Jean Serpa. My sponsor was Jason Minsky.
Oh.
Miss him. But I want to ring the bell 3 times today. 1 for my daughter, who turns 29 today. My nephew, who is graduating from Bellarmine. And my son, who is graduating from St. Christopher's.
Oh, my gosh.
It's a big month.
Thank you so much for sharing the great news.
I'd like to ring the bell 1 time for my grandson, Ronak Dua, who is graduating from Wake Forest University this year, and his graduation is on 19th, and I have come from India to visit his graduation, and that I'll ring the bell once.
Thank you. Congratulations. Whew, that was, and there's more, and there's more. Hey, Jay Ross.
Hi, President Heather. Jay Ross with Lathrop GPM. My sponsor was Bill Barron. I want to ring the bell 1 time, not only because it is great to see Julie Matsushima, but because she is the legendary leader and initiator of our children's play garden.
Thank you. Beautiful tribute. There's so much love in the room today. You guys are all tributing each other. I love that. Kaleidoscopic. All right, we good? We cleared? All right, thank you very, very much for a great ring the bell, and congratulations on all your personal milestones out there. Next up, executive chefs. Come on up. Rick Alpers.
Good. Hi, everybody. How you doing? Everybody awake out there? All right. Executive chefs are getting ready to roll it out again. So you're about a month away. Get ready. Jim Nielsen, Sam Wool, and myself are head of that group. Kind of. No, it's really a lot of fun to work with those guys. We've been doing it a long, long time. The tradition of this barbecue, I think we just have it inside of us, and we don't really talk too much about it. This club has been doing this event for 100 years. 100 years. Yeah. And I was going to tell a silly joke about Rod being there at the first one, but I won't do it. We're excited to be ready, yeah, and we are ready. We're excited to cook this for you. We start 2 days before. The food prep really isn't 2 days before, but the mechanics of it are, such that we have to be there and get it done, get it organized, get it cleaned up, get it ready. And it's all a labor of love. We love doing this. It really is a fun event. There's an opportunity for you, okay? And I'm not anybody to offer you an opportunity. So I brought Bert And Bert's going to talk about the opportunity.
Okay, your opportunity is to have a great time, but it's also an opportunity to bring friends that are potentially future Rotary members. But for me, the spring barbecue was always the most special of the two, if I could choose, because it really is a thank you to our president for such a great, great year, because it's really their last hurrah. This is Heather's goodbye, and it's every president's last real big event. And so let's get her 400 or 500 people, because as Rick says, it takes 2 days for our boys to do this and girls do this barbecue. It's so much work to get everything going that if we're going to do it for 300, which is usually about what we have, let's get Heather 400 or seriously 500 people. Bring your friends. This is a community fun event. We shouldn't even have to ask you to come and have fun. Come and have fun.
That was so exciting. What a beautiful tribute just there. Paula Ball will be teaching some line dancing as well. And of course, we're going to have our classic cars there as well. And a few more surprises that we'll keep revealing. It's President's time. Okay, you are invited. This is, what am I inviting you to? That logo is way too small. Lee Weimer's Emerging Artists Awards. This is the kickoff they do every year. This is the fundraising portion that helps support the recognition that happens in the fall. So much fun. This one's going to be in a very coveted backyard of Nancy Williams and Mike Bohr. If you haven't been to their space yet, it's like a private park, you guys. It's well set up for this event. Please take a look at that QR code and register and donate generously. We were able to take these awards from, a few $100, $1,000 to what is it up to now per artist? Is it $5,000 per artist? That's really meaningful. That really moves the needle. Yeah, right. So we get that a few different ways, but part of that boost is from going to this event. So check that one out. Alrighty, and then I also want to make sure that you know about the district conference and celebrating the magic of Rotary. The district conference this year is at San Jose State. There you go. So make sure and do that. And I'll be receiving an award there this year too. So that's a pretty neat little thing. So please check out the magic of Rotary. I'm going to let that hover for just a minute while I watch none of you grab your phones. I'm on it. Yay. Look at her. Good job. Thank you. Yeah, the district conference is a lot of fun. You kind of get hooked into the bigger piece that is Rotary International, and you see what a powerhouse. And you get guests from India coming. It's wonderful. So we're part of a much larger family. Alrighty, next up, let's get Steve Preminger to introduce our guest program of the day. Steve.
Dr. Anna Lembke is a renowned psychiatrist, author, and one of today's most influential voices on addiction. She's a professor of psychiatry at Stanford University School of Medicine and heads their addiction medicine dual diagnosis clinic. With a degree from Yale and her medical degree from Stanford, Dr. Lembke blends deep academic expertise with a clear, compassionate voice. She's well known for her best-selling book, Dopamine Nation. I meant to make that look smoother, especially for the people on video. Finding Balance in the Age of Indulgence, which delves into the neuroscience of pleasure and pain, examining how modern society's overindulgence affects our brains and behaviors. Dr. Lembke's insights have reached a broad audience through her appearances in the Netflix documentary, The Social Dilemma, where she discusses the addictive nature of social media. Beyond her publications and media appearances, she continues to influence the field through her clinical practice, research, teaching, and making significant contributions to our understanding and treatment of addiction in the 21st century. Dave wanted me to mention that we have several copies of her book, Dopamine Nation, available after her comments today. No tariffs yet. So please help me welcome Dr. Anna Lembke.
my hypothesis of what's causing it. So the plenty paradox is essentially the phenomenon observed over about the last 50 to 75 years that as wealth has gone up, happiness has gone down. And this is unusual and unprecedented because prior to about 50 years ago, and as soon as people were tracking this sort of thing, what sociologists and economists and anthropologists observed prior to about 50 years ago, that if any given country, if you had them do happiness surveys to rank on a scale from 1 to 10 how happy they were, 10 being the happiest, 1 being unhappy, you would find that as income went up in that country, people got happier. And likewise, suicide rates were highest in the poorest countries in the world. Starting at about the late 1990s, early 2000s, that began to change. And instead what was happening as the richest countries got richer, people got less and less happy. Also rates of anxiety, depression, other forms of mental illness, and very sadly in some countries, suicide went up in the richest countries in the world. And this is essentially the plenty paradox. Why is it that today in the modern world, as we have all of our survival needs met and much beyond that, we are less and less happy and sadly more likely to end our own lives? And I want to suggest to you that the neuroscience of pleasure and pain can inform what may be happening here. Now, there have been many hypotheses proffered. I'm sure that these are at play too, things like socioeconomic inequality, geographic and social dislocation, multi-generational trauma, all of these contribute to modern suffering. But I'm going to suggest to you that it is in fact abundance itself that is contributing to this unique and unprecedented form of suffering. And I'm going to do that by telling you something about what we've learned in the past 50 years or so in terms of how we process pleasure and pain. So now a very brief and condensed version and highly oversimplified version of the neuroscience of addiction. Here we go. One of the exciting discoveries in the past 75 years is that of a dedicated brain reward circuit consisting broadly of that large gray matter area right behind our foreheads called the prefrontal cortex. You can think of that as the brakes on the car. And then these deeper limbic structures that you can think of as the accelerator on the car. And addiction is either a problem with too little brakes, too much accelerator, or some combination. Also in that accelerator region of the car, we have a lot of neurons that release dopamine. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter. Neurotransmitters modulate neural circuits. And essentially, dopamine has been discovered to be important for the experience of pleasure, reward, and motivation. The more dopamine that is released in the reward circuitry, and the faster that it's released, the more likely is that experience to be pleasurable, reinforcing, or something that we want to do again and again. But to me, the most fascinating finding in neuroscience is the discovery that pleasure and pain are co-located in the brain. So the same parts of the brain that process pleasure also process pain, and they work like opposite sides of a balance. So imagine that deep in your limbic brain or that nucleus accumbens, that reward processing part of the brain, you have something like a teeter-totter in a kid's playground. When we experience pleasure, it tips one way, and when we experience pain, it tips the other. There are certain rules governing this balance, and the first and most important rule is that the balance wants to remain level, or what neuroscientists call homeostasis, such that with any deviation from that level balance, our brains are going to work very hard to restore a level balance. And how our brains do that is key to understanding what happens when we go from adaptive recreational use of a substance or behavior to maladaptive harmful use. So imagine that, for example, in my case, I read a romance novel, and as I talk about in my book, I did develop a mild addiction to romance novels, which you can think of as socially sanctioned pornography for women. Twilight was my gateway drug. Any Twilight fans in the room? Okay, so when I read a romance novel, that releases dopamine, the reward neurotransmitter, in my reward pathway, and my pleasure-pain balance tilts to the side of pleasure. But no sooner has that happened than my brain adapts to that increased dopamine firing by downregulating dopamine transmission. This process is called neuroadaptation. And you might imagine that as these little gremlins hopping on the pain side of the balance to bring it level again. But the gremlins like it on the balance, so they don't get off as soon as my balance is level. They stay on until I'm tilted an equal and opposite amount to the side of pain. And I experienced that as getting to the end of a chapter in my romance novel, swearing that I was going to put the book away and go to bed, and then find myself craving and wanting to read another chapter. So it's the hangover, the come down, or what we call the opponent process mechanism. Now, if I can resist that urge to continue to read, then those gremlins will get the message that their job is done. They'll hop off the balance and homeostasis will be restored. My craving will resolve and I will go to sleep and wake up in time to be ready for work the next day. But when we live in a world in which we have instantaneous access to an almost infinite supply of highly reinforcing substances and behaviors, including at the touch of our fingertips through our digital devices, and digital media activate the same reward pathway as drugs and alcohol, then a much faster way to restore homeostasis is to simply reach for more of our drug. And what happens when we do that? Those gremlins start to multiply. They get bigger and stronger, and pretty soon I've got Arnold Schwarzenegger gremlins, and there are enough of them to fill this whole room until eventually they're camped out on the pain side of the balance. And now we've entered into addicted brain. We've essentially changed our hedonic or joy set point such that now we need more of our drugs in more potent forms, not to get high and feel good, but just to level the balance and feel normal. And when we're not using, we're walking around with a balance tilted to the side of pain, experiencing the universal symptoms of withdrawal from any addictive substance or behavior, which are anxiety, irritability, insomnia, depression, and craving. And this is why people will relapse even when they can see that their lives are better when they stop using. And this is why we get so many people coming into clinical care who are suffering from depression and anxiety and don't even recognize their addictive behaviors as contributing to that process. And I would suggest to you, this is also why we are seeing increasing rates of anxiety, depression, and suicidality, including among young people. They've changed, or we have changed, our joy set point. We are so inundated 24/7 with so many reinforcing substances and behaviors that, by the way, we control, because control is a huge part of the addictive process, that we have lost the ability to tolerate distress. We have lost the ability to take joy in simple pleasures. Okay, so what can we do about it? The neuroscience suggests that the first thing that we should do is to abstain for long enough for those gremlins to hop off the reward pathway so that homeostasis can be restored. Now, let me say that in the case of things like a severe opioid addiction, one of the most evidence-based treatments is actually to treat with opioids like methadone or buprenorphine. But people aren't getting on high on those opioids. What's happening is they're getting back to their homeostatic level baseline so that they can actually engage in recovery process, right? But opioid use disorder is the only disorder for which we have an effective evidence-based medication to do that. Most of us really struggle with this process of giving up our drug of choice because we feel a heck of a lot worse before we feel better. But essentially, what we are recommending, what we do clinical care, and it's really simple, we actually prescribe 30 days of abstinence from a person's drug of choice, assuming they're not at risk for life-threatening withdrawal. Why 30 days? Because 30 days is about the amount of time people can sort of wrap their heads around. But also, it turns out that for many different types of addiction and many different types of people, 30 days is enough time to begin to reset those reward pathways, for the gremlins to hop off, and for us to at least begin to move in the direction of homeostasis. So in terms of the intervention, it's abstain from our drug of choice, right? And in my case, I wasn't even really aware of how bad my romance novel reading problem had become. But it had gotten pretty bad. I mean, it got to the point where I was needing more and more potent forms to get the same effect. I was taking romance novels to work and reading in the 10 minutes between patients. I was going on family vacations, and instead of interacting with my family, I was hiding away in a room and reading romance novels. And my bottom, and this is no pun intended, was when I found myself at 2 in the morning on a weeknight reading about butt plugs in 50 Shades of Grey, and like saying to myself, like, I'm not even interested in butt plugs. I don't even know what butt plugs are. Like, how did I get here? And that phenomenon, that kind of surreal phenomenon of like looking at our addicted selves and being like, who is that person, right, is one that we hear again and again in clinical care. The point being that when we're chasing dopamine, we're very poor observers of true cause and effect. We tend to maximize the benefits and minimize the harms. But when we get some distance from that drug of choice, it's really a kind of aha moment, like, wow, like I can't believe I was investing so much time and energy. So I took my own advice, and the way that I just, realized that this was a problem, actually I was teaching a class of psych residents, and we were doing an interactive exercise where one person played the patient, the other person played the doctor. We were one short for pairing off, so I took a patient role with this very lovely young man who was in training to be a psychiatrist. And per the script, he said, is there one behavior you'd like to change and one thing that you can do to change that behavior? And I thought to myself, well, I do have this late night reading habit. I did not tell him what I was reading. That would have been really awkward. I do have this late night reading habit, and I think I could get rid of my Kindle because I think that would help. And this is just talking about the Kindle. The technology has allowed us to accelerate the addiction narrative because there is no pause between desire and consumption, and we can consume anonymously, which I was, right? Like I was pretending like I was reading War and Peace when it was really like, Vampire Does Dallas or whatever. I don't know, it was a lot. I've read a lot. So I said I could get rid of my Kindle, right? So I decided, I had no intention of doing any of that, but then the next day as I was going about my day, I couldn't unsee that conversation. And by the way, that is the lack of awareness of our behaviors and the way that our behaviors come into awareness when we put them into words is really powerful. So when I'm teaching psych residents, I'll say to them, when you ask your patients about what they're smoking or what they're drinking or what they're doing online, you're getting the information, but they're also getting the information, right? Which is really true. Because until we tell another human being, I am spending my time doing this or I am consuming that, we really don't see it. It's kind of lurking around in the mysterious part of our brain. So once I said that to the young psychiatrist, I decided, okay, I'm gonna do my best to take my own advice. I'm gonna give up romance novels for a month. And I was astounded at how much I experienced withdrawal, especially at the time I would typically read. So when it comes to dopamine, our brains are like little alarm clocks. We're used to getting our drug when we're used to getting our drug. And if we get to that point in the day and we don't get it, it's like ding, 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 ding. There's a lot of anger up there compelling us and creating all kinds of narratives as to why we should consume even though we committed to not consuming. And I had a very difficult time putting myself to sleep. I was anxious, I was restless. And as I always tell my patients, it's gonna get worse before it gets better, but it will get better. And indeed, I had about 2 weeks of insomnia, but by the latter half, I was sleeping better. And at a month, I was feeling great, less depressed, less anxious. I had been getting more and more dysphoric without realizing it. And I thought, great, I'll go back to reading romance novels. And immediately I binged all weekend on romance novels. We call that the abstinence violation effect, and that does happen. But that was also informative, right? I took that as information to say, gee, if I really want to change this behavior, I probably need to give it up for longer. The point being that in clinical care, we start with asking for 30 days of abstinence. We talk about self-binding strategies. That is, what are the barriers that we can put between ourselves and our drug of choice? Because we live in a world that is conspiring against us, right? We're constantly being invited to consume. So part of being successful in this project is not just limiting our access to our drug, but also all of the triggers for that drug. And then, when people come back after 4 weeks, if they weren't able to do it, that's important information. If they were able to do it, the vast majority of them feel much better, and then that's useful information. And then we talk about what is next. Most people want to go back to using their drug of choice in moderation. And we can try that, and see if they're successful. And some people want to maintain abstinence. But the point is, really, the bottom line is that we live in a drugified world in which almost all substances and behaviors have become more accessible, more potently reinforcing, more novel, more bountiful, such that in order for us to really be in harmony and balance with the way that our brains evolved over millions of years of evolution, which is to say they evolved for a world of scarcity, not the world that we live in now, we really need to create a world within a world, an environment that allows us to press that pause button between desire and consumption so that we can consume less of these things that are overwhelming our dopamine reward pathway. Thank you so much for your attention. I'd be delighted to take your questions.
I'll start. Behaviors, work addiction. If you could speak briefly to that, how do we work towards overcoming that?
Yeah, great. So the question is work addiction. So in general, what I didn't talk about, but I'm going to briefly summarize to answer your question. In general, one of the things that we also prescribe is something called hormesis, which is actually doing things that are hard or painful. I think most people would think of work as, effortful and painful. Why do we prescribe that? Because it's a great way to get your dopamine indirectly by paying for it up front. If we go back to this pleasure-pain balance, those gremlins are agnostic to whatever the initial stimulus is. So we know that when we press on the pleasure side, they go on the pain side. But if we press on the pain side, turns out they will go on the pleasure side, and we will get our dopamine indirectly because the body will sense injury, and in response to injury, upregulate those feel-good neurotransmitters like dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, endogenous opioids, endogenous cannabinoids. The problem is if we overdo it. If we press too hard on the pain side, we exhaust those neurotransmitters, and then we don't have a natural corrective. One example of this is self-cutting, right? So a lot of people who are in psychological distress cut on themselves. Why do they do that? It's a distraction from mental distress, but it's also a great way to get endogenous opioids because it releases opioids and dopamine in the brain and you feel released. But people get addicted to cutting and ultimately it exhausts it. Workaholism is the same thing. If we're not in balance with our work, if we work too hard, then essentially we're not going to get the natural reward from the work itself, and instead we're going to get into this terrible work hard, play hard dynamic where we're working too hard past what our minds and bodies can tolerate, and now we have a come down from work. In order to tolerate the come down, if you're like me, you'll go on YouTube and say, I'm just going to watch one video, and 4 hours later you're still watching YouTube videos, right? It's like we cannot relax ourselves, and we need the medium or the drug to relax ourselves. So people will come in and say, how can I watch fewer YouTube videos? And one of the first things I'll say, you can work less hard if you're able, or find a different kind of work, right? Because if people overdo it and then they're using stimulants so that they can work longer, they can't have the natural reward from the effort. That was a long answer, but I hope that makes sense.
That was an awesome answer.
Okay.
I think I've got one right behind you, Emily, first, and then Emily.
Yeah, so thank you so much. It was amazing and absolutely entertaining. I was like, oh my gosh, you should be a comedian.
Okay.
But so good, so good. So I guess my question to you is this one. If you're looking at social media where we're being sold that this is a way that you connect, right? So human beings need to connect with one another, and you have relationships with people you remember in high school, and you're able to connect through social media with them. How does that interfere with the addiction and also the lack of feeling that if I do stop doing this, then I'll no longer be connected to people that I know or want to continue having a relationship with? And I'm interested in knowing how their lives are going.
Great.
Can you
Thanks
address
for
that?
that
Thank
question.
you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so we are wired to connect. Oxytocin is a love hormone. My colleague at Stanford, Rob Lembke, just in the last 4 years or so, identified that oxytocin actually binds to dopamine-releasing neurons in the nucleus accumbens. That is why falling in love feels so good, because we actually get high on that. The problem is that social media has drugified human connection by distilling it down to all its most reinforcing components at a very fast kinetic rate with all of these metrics and quantifications that dopamine loves, such that now we are engaging in a medium that, yes, initially may be about human connection, but ultimately becomes about dopamine hits. So, is there a form of social interaction and social medium that's not addictive? There is. So there are addictive social media, and I think we can come up with non-addictive social media. For example, I would say Zoom. I've never had a single patient ever addicted to Zoom. I guess the question is there some happy medium? And also importantly, we need to think about protecting kids. Kids are a subcategory of vulnerable brains. Why? Because they're still connecting the prefrontal cortex to the nucleus accumbens. They're still pruning back the neurons they're not using, myelinating the ones they're using most often to build the scaffolding for adult life. They're especially sensitive to peer influence. They're natural risk takers. And so now you've created this human connection medium. You're giving it to a population of humans, kids and teens, who are especially susceptible to this, and it is a drug. It is essentially a drug, and people now will go on there and they will consume, and they'll consume, and there's no interaction at all. Of course, now we have the AI bots too that are AI engineered to tell people what they want to hear. So think about that. Raising a generation of humans who only hear what they want to hear about themselves. This is very bad news, as we all know, right? So I guess that's what I would say. We have to protect kids. I don't know that there's an entertaining form of social media that is ultimately going to be healthy for kids. I've been a huge proponent about getting smartphones out of schools so kids have the freedom to learn and teachers have the freedom to teach. I hope you all in your work and as community leaders can advocate for getting smartphones out of schools, K through 12, bell to bell. Thanks.
Dr. Emily Robin.
Hi there. I don't know anything about children, but I would venture that it's funny because I'm a pediatrician.
Okay.
That the Rotary Summit Center might be perceived as a positive social networking site.
Good.
So to speak.
Good.
So in-person connectivity. But my question is this, back to Dave's thing about workaholic, and what if the thing pressing really hard on the pain side of the seesaw is something that you have absolutely no control over and is like a persistent, terrible thing, like a family member with a really serious illness, let's say. Mm-hmm. And so now you want to like put some weight on the pleasure side. Like, what's some productive things? Like, right, I could become addicted to fentanyl, but I don't want to do that, and I don't want to get addicted to my phone. So like, what could I get addicted to that wouldn't be detrimental to my health?
Great. So I think there are a couple really important points / questions in your comment / question. First of all, I want to address what I think you're talking about with the systemic issues and the things you can't control. Sure, I can say work less, but a lot of people can't work less, right? And there are very dehumanizing forms of work that even if you don't have to do them too much, they're just so awful. Which just really points to the point that the people most vulnerable to addiction in the modern age, I believe, are poor people living in rich countries because they have the most access to cheap sources of dopamine and the least access to the healthy sources of dopamine that are more self-sustaining. What can we do when we're in a state of stress or distress and we want to soothe ourselves? This comes up all the time in clinical care. My patient says, I get a craving to use and I really want to use, what can we do? First of all, you have to take a couple steps upstream and make sure that you have an environment that is conducive to healthy consumption. So this gets to the self-binding strategy. You need to get your drug of choice out of the house, right? I have families who come in and say, my kid's always on the phone, while, by the way, they're interrupting our conversation because they're on their phone, right? So you have to model as a parent what you want and you have to create a healthy environment that incentivizes you to make good choices before you're in the moment of having to make that choice. That's a big one. And then basically we recommend healthy sources of dopamine to get that kind of what you need, that self-soothing, especially in times of need. And those are things like reaching out to other humans. That's probably the number one, preferably in real life, but any medium that is where the medium itself is not addictive. This is things like movement. So movement is medicine. Can people get addicted to sports and exercising? They can and they do, but it's rarer. Going into nature. Nature is incredibly soothing because it's organic. We are not engineering nature, right? And we need to be in environments that we have not engineered. We're almost exclusively now in our self-engineered little, cubby holes. Hormesis, which is to say healthy pain can be actually really good to reset the reward pathway. This is exercise, but also things like ice-cold water baths or showers, so hydrotherapy in general, alternating ice, hot and ice. This is things like just doing anything that requires effortful engagement where you feel better afterwards. So prayer, meditation, cleaning out your closet. Not that those things are all equivalent, just saying what we call type 2 fun, where it's not necessarily something I want to do. I don't love it in the moment. I'm glad when it's over, but afterwards I feel better.
Thank you. I've got Brad over here to your right.
Hi, thanks for speaking with us today. You know, your research reminds me of a video I saw many years ago that was, and I think it was from Stanford, where they had children in a room and they put a marshmallow in front of them and basically said, you know, when we come back in 5 or 10 minutes, if you haven't eaten this, we'll give you 2 marshmallows, right? And it was kind of determining that whole thing. Is that part of it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the marshmallow experiment. It's basically looking at kids' ability to delay gratification. Their number one finding was that the older the kid, the more likely to delay gratification. So not, an earth-shattering finding, showing that delaying gratification comes with maturity or aging, but they also tracked them forward and found that those who were able, per their age appropriate to delay gratification, had better life outcomes. So that was interesting. There's a little known addendum to that where they modified the experiment and they grouped the 2 kids into 2 separate groups. And in addition to the plate of marshmallows, they also had a bell. And they said to one of the groups, now, if within those 15 minutes you want us to come back, the researcher, just ring the bell and we'll come back. And they said that to both the groups. But in one of the groups, when the kids rang the bell, they actually came back. And the other group where the kids rang the bell, they didn't come back. So what's your guess about which kids ate their marshmallows sooner? Right, where the kids who were lied to ate their marshmallows sooner, which brings up a really interesting aspect of recovery, which is, in my experience, patients who get into long-term robust recovery from severe addiction have learned that they can't lie. Because if they lie about small things, they will start to lie about the big things and they will relapse. And I think the marshmallow experiment shows that if you live in a world where people generally lie and lying is accepted, people are going to move into survival mode, right? They're going to feel that that's an unsafe world where they can't rely on to know what people are going to do in the future, and they're going to move into consumptive mode. And I think, ironically, we are living in that time where there's this sense of fake news that people aren't sure. So you have people moving into their tribes, collecting everything they need, and it's just kind of sad.
We're going to go with Blake.
Hi, Blake Ward. I'd like to hear your opinion on video game addiction.
So video game addiction is real. I just want to emphasize, with all of these substance and behaviors, the vast majority of people will be able to self-correct. When we talk about clinical addiction, we're talking about 10 to 15% of the population will develop a very serious and life-threatening. So that's true whether it's alcohol, right, or it's video games, or romance novels, or what have you. But video game addiction is real. We've seen rising rates of video game addiction since video games were invented. When I'm talking about addiction, I'm talking about continued compulsive use despite harm, which is the definition. And, folks who, especially teenage boys, who end up not being able to go to school, not leaving their houses, becoming very depressed, and in some cases, even taking their own lives. It's really tragic. Video game addiction has been incorporated into the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, as well as the ICD-11 by the World Health Organization. So it's been recognized as a real addictive disorder, unlike, by the way, social media, which has not yet been officially recognized, but I think eventually will be recognized. And the intervention is very similar. We ask them to abstain. We ask them to get rid of all of the different types of laptops. We ask them to get separate laptops, one for school, one for entertainment if they ultimately go back to using. When they go back to using, we ask them to make a very specific plan. We get the whole family on board, but it can be a very serious addiction.
Fantastic. I'm going to go with iHouse first, and then Rod, and then if we can get Gloria right after, that might be wrapping us up. iHouse.
Yeah, so my question is for things that are enjoyable that can become addictive, what are ways that you can do it in moderation to prevent yourself from getting stuck into the addiction? Or if you've recovered from being addicted to it, what are ways to continue using it without relapsing fully?
Yeah, great. So we have a lot of folks who come to us whose goal is moderation of intoxicants, however you define them. And we work with folks around that, basically by asking first for 30 days of abstinence, or a dopamine fast is the sort of colloquial term. Why do we do that? Because we found that people are actually more successful in moderating if they first take a break, reset reward pathways, and then go back to using. To gradually reduce use turns out to just be much harder. So that's where we start. We say take a break for 30 days first, get your head together, get more perspective, look at true cause and effect. And then before you go back to using, make a very specific plan for what that will look like, especially in terms of quantity, frequency, and accountability. So make sure you can track honestly how much you're using, how much and how often, and then, have a kind of an accountability buddy or a way of tracking that. And, just be really mindful about that use. But quantity and frequency matter, especially daily use. So if you have any intoxicant in your life or drug that you just enjoy, whether it's a substance or a behavior, try not to use it every day, because those gremlins accumulate with daily use. But if you take little breaks in between, you're less likely to get into that problem with that dopamine deficit state. But you also want to be careful about binge use, right? So I remember I was on this radio show with a host, and it was about moderation management, which is an alternative to Alcoholics Anonymous, about people who had decided that they wanted to go back to drinking or wanted to drink in moderation. This was hosted by a man who got into recovery from his alcohol addiction through Alcoholics Anonymous, then left Alcoholics Anonymous, went to moderation management, and hosted this radio program about moderation. He said, I've been able to achieve moderation, and it's totally doable. And I said, that's great. And I've had a few patients over the years who have been able to do the same. I said, by the way, what does moderation look like for you? He said, well, basically on every Friday, I lock up my keys, I lock myself in my house, and I drink like 16, basically a whole, a fifth of vodka or two, I don't remember what it was. It was an enormous amount of alcohol that he would drink, and then to him that was moderation. And that's like, I wouldn't think of that as moderation, but the point being that, potato, when you hear somebody talk about moderating their use.
We're at time. John, do you have a real quick question and quick answer? We can wrap up.
Yes, quick. These are high achievers. You probably are talking to a room full of addicts.
Okay,
on
I
your
believe
basis. Now, how do we identify reliably our what do you call it, the thing that we're addicted to?
Yeah, great question. So addiction is a brain disease. There's a distinct pathophysiology identified through brain imaging studies, animal models. However, there is not yet a blood test or brain scan to diagnose addiction. We still base the diagnosis on what we call phenomenology. This is patterns of behavior that repeat themselves over time. Broadly speaking, it's the continued compulsive use of a substance or behavior despite harm to self and or others. Things to look for are the 3 C's: out of control use, craving, and consequences, especially continued use despite consequences. Other things to look for are tolerance, needing more of the drug in more potent forms over time to get the same effect, or finding that at a consistent dose, our drug just isn't working for us anymore. And by the way, that's one of the main reasons that folks come in for clinical treatment. They're like, it's not working anymore, or it's actually doing the opposite of what it used to do. And then also withdrawal. When we stop using, finding that it's very difficult. FOMO is actually a form of digital media withdrawal, fear of missing out. And then a soft sign that's not in the diagnostic and statistical manual, but that I think is really important, is lying. So when we find ourselves lying about our consumption, that should be a warning bell to us that maybe we're slightly veering in the wrong direction.
This has been absolutely fascinating. We went over just a minute because these questions and answers are I'm sorry I couldn't get to you, Dr. Gloria Duffy. A gift has been made in your name to Preservation Action Council San Jose.
Thank you.
And then it's our tradition to give you an agricultural gift, the root of our Santa Clara County. So come on up and we'll take a photo. I'll pop down here with you. These are premium Chandler walnuts for you. Thank you. All right, and don't forget, she's got her book here. It is Dopamine Nation. Hopefully you've seen that on bestseller list and pick up your copy. Next week, we have, oh my gosh, this program committee. You guys are amazing. Don't need 2 microphones. Celeste Volz-Bard on venture capital among the stars, fueling the new space economy. You're not going to want to miss that. And then final thoughts, happy 65th anniversary, Bonnie and Marv. And I'm so proud of this one. I've had this as a Rotary goal, is to actually cement the relationship of the Rotaract Club of San Jose State University that started with 0 members, went to 2, and this was the group that showed up at Fish Day. These guys are a powerhouse. We'll see you next week. Check all the information in the lobby. We are adjourned.